Let's go ahead and take a look at the questions for 3.2 and a topic of measure of spread. How spread out are the values, and we measure it through standard deviation, and then the rules like the empirical rule that comes with that. And so the first thing we want to do is look at that same data we have, determine the sample standard deviation of the speeds, express your answer to the nearest mile per hour. And so we would do that not by hand, but we would do that with summary statistics. Let's do that from the beginning again. Let me remove the 120 this time, the outlier. You'd go stat, summary stats, columns, and then we want speeds in the columns. And in this case, we're looking for standard deviation. This is the sample standard deviation. Later on, we look at here, the unadjusted is the population standard deviation, but we'll take that one there. Compute that, and you get an answer of 6.175. And so that's what we would get in for the standard deviation for that first question that we have there. And then the next question is regarding, let's just get that in there. And let's copy that in. Sorry about that. There we go. Copy. Okay, so we're going to get in. So we answered the first question now. So there is your standard deviation. We'll have that there. Perfect. Okay. And now the next question we're looking at. Where is it disappearing to? Darn it. And so then you have the standard deviation there. You see 6.175 miles per hour. And again, what that means is, going back to the definition of that, on average, the values are all the distribution around 6, right? From each value has an average distance of 6 from the average. And so we're looking at, remember the average was 32. And so on average, the average distance each of these points is from the mean is 6.175. And so how we approach that with the empirical rule is, first, the empirical rule applies when the data is normally distributed, which we have here. And then what we're looking at, the empirical rule makes statements about the distribution of the data. And in this case here, since we know what the average is and we know the standard deviation, we're going to say around 6. Again, the approximation that we have here is, what we're looking at is that the speeds, if we look at the distributions, right, of the speeds here, we saw it had this shape, the histogram, right? Had this bell shaped, and what we know in the middle here is that the mean was 32 approximately, and then the standard deviation was 6. We're just averaging that, right? Just rounding off. And so then what we learned is that the distribution of data with this type of information is by standard deviations, and then this would be 1 standard deviation, this would be 2 standard deviations away, this is 1, this is 2 standard deviations away. And so using the empirical rule, what we end up saying is that between here and here, this is 68% of the data, and that's from the empirical rule. So 68% of that would be in between 26 and 38. And what was the actual percentage between that? Between 26 and 38, we can see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9 out of 14. And so 9 out of the actual, this is number 4, 9 out of 14 are in between those values there, and then you can actually then calculate the percent of that, right? And it's about 64%. So you can see how the empirical rule approximates, without even knowing what the data is, it approximates that.